There's been a little bit of confusion about how we can go from making a number line that's individual, plotting just one type of fraction, and putting two fractions on the same number line that have different denominators. So let's just kind of back up. On a previous lesson, I taught you how you can always start at 0, right? And underneath it, you can call it 0 over whatever the denominator of the fraction is, so 0 to the fifth. And then the key is to space it out. So this would be 1/5 right here. And you keep going until you bump in to another whole number. So 1/5, this would be 2/5, 3/5, 4/5. So I'm literally going to write 4/5 here just to show you. And then, of course, the next one would be 5 over 5. And the same as 0 divided by 5 is 0. So here's the whole number, and they're sitting at the same spot. 5 divided by 5 is 1. And you guys seem to understand that. And we know that 1/5 is located right here. Well, the problem came when we had to take information from this little number line that you created and try to put it onto a huge number line with multiple fractions. So let's take a look at it. When you do this fraction, you need to figure out what whole numbers it's between. So I always kind of like to write the whole numbers right beside it. Here's 0 on the left, and here's 1 on the right, because what we did here is we knew it was between 0 and 1. Now, the halfway point is about right here. And you can see that 1/5 is a little bit closer to 0 than it is to the 1/2. So let's go get a magic pen box here, and let's just kind of zoom in on this so we can see. You take a look at your number line that you created, on a scratch sheet of paper, and you figure out between what two numbers it lies in, and then what you do is you come up here and you pretty much do the same thing. You go find those two numbers that it should be between, and you focus right here and you go, where should it be? Okay. So, and I think we can agree it should be right about here or so. And so literally you just go and take your pen and you go, you know what? 1/5 should be about right here. Draw a line up and let us know that that's 1/5. And so your big number line is safe. It's not all nasty. You don't have all this stuff down here. And that's what it'll be. Let me switch back to the right pen though. There we go. So again, the 1/5 should be about right here because you can see between the halfway and 0 down here on this, it's the same spot. Now, let me just kind of clean this all up here. This would be like scratch sheet of paper, so you don't see that anymore. But up here is on your main paper. Let's go do 11/3. There's two ways you can do this. You can start at 0, just like we did before. So here's 0, and this would be 0 over, see that's a 3 there? That's a 3. So 1/3. This would be 2/3. And then this one would be 3 over 3, and 3 divided by 3 is 1. Well, I don't see 11/3 in there, so we got to keep going. So this is, I'm not going to label it all. 4/3, 5/3, here's 6/3. So 6 divided by 3 is 2. 7/3, 8/3, 9/3. 9 divided by 3 is 3. We're still not 11/3. 10/3, 11/3, 12/3. Here's 12/3 right here. 12 divided by 3 is 4, so this is the number 4. But 11/3 is sitting right here. So when you go to look at this, really the only thing that we care about is the distance between, 3 and 4. Where is this 11/3 at? Well, it's definitely closer to the 4. So take a look right here between this 3 and this 4 and go, where should it be? Between 3 and 4, it should be closer to the 4. So I'd say probably somewhere right in through here. And that is 11/3. My handwriting's a little bad there. Okay. That can take a little bit of time. And so everybody's always looking for another way of doing it. But again, it works the same way that we did the 1/5. You start at 0 and you just start counting up. And then you focus on where it falls between, and then you can move it up here to the large one. Well, remember, in grade school, they taught you how to make an improper fraction into a mixed number. You take the top number, the 11, put it inside the division, and put the outside number as the denominator. 3 goes into 11 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9, so we subtract 9. And so This is left over. Here's your whole number right here. So right up here, this is your whole number. That's going to be 3. And the leftover becomes the new numerator. And we still use the same denominator, the same bottom number as always. Well, this is 3 2/3. So look down here. We can literally put a 3 right here. And you can call this 3 and just call it 0/3 because it's kind of like starting right at 3, right? And then count up by thirds. 3 1/3, 3 2/3, and then over here this would be 3 3/3, and that 3/3 is a 1, so it's kind of like a 1 plus 3, and that's the reason this is 4. And it lets you be able to see that in the spacing between the 3 and the 4, yep, it's just a little bit closer to the 4. It's really helpful if you can figure out the halfway spot in between it, because then you can look up here at this graph where you've got that halfway tick, and you know, hey, just a little bit closer to the halfway spot than it is to the 4. A little bit closer to the halfway spot than it is to the 4. And I think you would agree it's a little bit closer to this halfway spot right here than it is to the 4. And that's what you're doing. You're doing a situational comparison between those whole numbers on your makeshift number line down here, and then moving it to your main one up there. Okay, so that's how we do the different fractions. That's how we also do the larger fractions that are going to become you know, better as mixed numbers. Now, what about the decimals? The decimals aren't too bad. You can instantly know with the decimal where it's between by looking at the front number. So it's going to be between 2 and 3. So let me switch over to green here. We're going to start at 2. And my basic idea is, for the most part, you can almost round any decimal to the nearest tenth, and that'll help you put it on a number line for a situation like this. So here's 2.0 right here. So this one would be 2.1. This would be 2.2. I'm not going to label them all. 2.3, 2.4, 2.5. Now you know 2.5 is the same as 2.5. If we can stretch this on out, we know 3's down here and this is the halfway point. Seriously, take a look at this. What's 2.2 closer to? 2 or the halfway spot? Yep. So now compare this to this spot right up here between the 2 and the half. Here's 2, there's 2.5. It looks like 2.2 is probably right here. Okay, so let me just kind of take off that square here. 2.2 is probably right here, and you're done with that. 2.2 is going to be closer to the whole number. 2.8, let's take a look at this. If this is the halfway point, if this is 2.5, we know that's 2.5. So 2.6, 2.7, 2.8. Let me write that one out. So right here's 2.8, 2.9, 3. Okay, so this would be 3.0. This would be a 3. Sorry for the decimal being hard to see there. And again, we're just looking how close is 2.8 to the 3 or to the half. It's definitely closer to the 3. So just nudge this one. Maybe about right there. Maybe it's back a little bit. Maybe it's right there. But I mean, we're going for an estimate here for the best place. 4.4. Come on now. If this is 4, so this would be 4.1. 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, 4.5. Here's the 4.5 spot. This is 4.5 and 4.4 is right there. It's pretty much right up against it. Okay. See how the distance is? We're looking between 4 and 4.5. So here's 4 and there's 4.5, and it's right there. So I just want you to get used to looking at this number line as a smaller version, and then what you're doing down here with your mini number lines that you're making to just double check your spacing, that lets you get a zoomed in look, and you're just copying it right above to the top graph there, the top number line. Last thing, I noticed some issues on this also, and I think we can get it fixed pretty quick. So let's take a look at negative 1.1. Where would that go? Some people are saying this is negative 1.1 right there. Well, guys, this is 0, and that's negative 1. So all of this is less than -1. Okay, I mean it's smaller. We're talking. This is more like negative 0.1 right here, and this is right here. This is negative 0.5. So it's going negative 0.1, negative 0.2, negative 0.3, negative 0.4, negative 0.5. We're going in this direction. Okay. So when we do the negatives, when we do negative fractions and negative decimals, I want you to start over here on the right side and put this as 0. And we want to do negative 1.1. Well, um, what two numbers would it fall between? It's going to be between -1 and -2. So let's watch and see how this happens here. Um, the next thing that would happen here would be negative 0.5. You know, if we skipped halfway, and then another halfway skip, this would get us to -1. Then another skip over here would get us to negative 1.5. Then another skip over with a half would get us here at negative 2.0. So it's going this way. It's like your numbers are increasing as you go to the left. So let's take a zoomed in look right here going from -1. You're at negative 1.0. So this is negative 1.1 right here. This is negative 1.2, negative 1.3, negative 1.4. Here's negative 1.5 right here. So let's go ahead and have us zoom in on this, and you can see negative 1.1 is to the left of -1. So here's -1. Here's negative 1.1, one tick mark past it, and the 1.5, the -1.5 mark is way over here. So we don't want to be back here. We want to go to the left of -1, and it's sitting literally about right in through here. So where would negative 1.9 be? Well, think about it. This is the negative 1.2, this is the negative 1.3, this is the negative 1.4. We got to keep on going past the negative 1.5, so let's put negative 1.5 right here. This negative 1.5 is the same thing. Negative 1.6, negative 1.7, negative 1.8, negative 1.9. So let me write that one out for us. And then the next one would be negative 2.0. So here's negative 2. So negative 1.9 is to the right of negative 2. And it's some distance away from negative 1.5. So it's right about here. So again, you're counting, your numbers are going up, so to speak, as you move to the left on that number line. And I think a lot of people will go in the wrong direction. So negative 2.4, here's negative 2 right here. Here's negative 2.5 right here, right at the halfway mark. So it's going to be right before it. Here's negative 2.4. So that's how we handle the decimals. But the next thing that we need to look at is just making sure that we can still, count up by fractions, because that was a situation that I was seeing on the assignment last night. We want to make sure we get that under control. Here's negative 1/4. So between what two numbers would negative 1/4 fall between? It should be between 0 and -1. So start over here with the 0. When we're at the negative numbers, start over here on the right, and then we can start counting up like normal. So here's negative 1/4 because this was 0/4 right here. So negative 1/4. Over here is negative 2/4, negative 3/4, and negative 4/4, which is the same as -1. Negative 1/4, hey, it's about halfway between, that's exactly halfway between the 1/2, the negative 2/4, and 0. So it's right here. And I think a lot of people were accidentally putting negative 1/4 right here, or they were putting it right here. So be careful there, okay, between 0 and -1 where it's falling. What about negative 3/4? Well, that's on the other side of the half. So here's negative 3/4. So again, let's just kind of touch the screen and count here. 0, negative 1/4, negative 2/4, which is the same as half, negative half, negative 3/4, right there, and then here's -1. And I'll be honest with you, I probably ought to scoot this one more in between. There we go. And what do we do when we see these improper fractions? Well, we know it's bigger than 1. We know it's going to be, you know, not between 0 and 1 or 0 and -1 in this case, we can still do the mixed number. So let's do 14 divided by 5. Top number divided by bottom number. This top number is inside, bottom number is outside. 5 goes into 14 twice, and 4 is left over. So that means that this is equal to 2, -2, because it was a negative, -2 and 4/5. So let's extend the page down here a little bit. If we're trying to figure out how to graph -2 and 4/5 of where it's at, -2 is going to be on the right side, -3 is going to be on the left side. It's somewhere in between those. And if you're going, why is -2 on the right side? Take a look at your number line. Here's -2, here's -3. -2 and 4/5 is counting up like this. You know, from -2, -2 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5 is probably going to be right there. Okay. So let's do a quick, let's actually use this number line right here. We'll use this one as a -2. Underneath it, we're going to call this -2, and what's the denominator? A 5. So we'll call it a 0/5 there because it's right there at -2. So this would be -2 and 1/5, -2 and 2/5, -2 and 3/5, -2 and 4/5. Let me write this one out right here. And this would be -2 and 5/5. So that'd be kind of like a -3 right there. Now look, guys, here's -2 way over here. Here's -3. If you found the halfway mark, probably right there. So it should be a little bit closer to -3 than it is the halfway spot. Puts it right here. And this is -14 over 5. Why aren't I writing -2 and 4/5? Because I'm using the same format they gave us. So folks, I know this can be challenging. I know you get frustrated. But when you take a look at these, if you're plotting fractions on there, you use your own number lines to see where it fits. With the decimals, we took a look at it. Can you always round the decimal to the 10th? For this type of work, you probably could, because who's to prove that my 2.2 is right here or maybe right here? You know what I'm saying? If you round it to the nearest 10th, it's probably going to be good enough to get it on here. And then when we get to negatives, remember, start at 0 on the right side and run it to the left.